What's a good trend that slowly disappeared but you'd like to see it making a comeback? Story 1. Social media before advertisements, when it was just actual friends that you knew in real life and their albums of tipsy photos from the weekend. Story 2. When companies weren't afraid to make electronics fun. Everything was translucent and came in like 7 different colors. Atomic purple Game Boys, kiwi green iMacs, the see-through landline phones. Now my options for a 1000 phone are black, slightly less black, and sad beige. I miss when our tech had personality. Answer: this. And also when people weren't afraid to make the new technology cool. Launches used to be all about, look at this cool new feature we've implemented, and people didn't mind if there was a bit of a learning curve to use it. Now they're all just catering to the lowest common denominator, and it's become year after year of, we took the same exact model from last year and made it a little faster. You're welcome. Genuinely can't remember the last time I was blown away by an advancement in tech. Story 3. Leaving the house and not being reachable. A good, hey, I'm going out. Talk to you when I'm back. No Life 360, red receipts, and constant texting. Just pure freedom and vibes. Answer: man, Life 360 is freaking evil. Why does anyone have to know where I am 247? And I feel sorry for kids these days. Every moment planned or tracked. When I was growing up and I came home from school and changed into regular clothes and went out to play, my parents didn't know where I went. All they said was be home by supper time. That's a freedom kids don't know today. Story 4. Social media has made people too comfortable with disrespecting people and not getting punched in the face for it. Mike Tyson. Story 5. Kids being able to safely play outside, and instead of calling the police, neighbors would keep an eye on everyone. My brother and I grew up outside and rode our bikes around the neighborhood. Neighbors would always ask us if we needed anything and told us to be careful. Once a neighbor was outside washing his car and pointed out an unfamiliar truck that had driven around the block a few times. He walked us home. Another neighbor was an older lady who brought us bottles of water when she saw us out, and we chased down her dog for her a few times. Now everyone freaks out when they see unsupervised children, even if they're doing nothing wrong. Answer: my dad used to go camping overnight by himself a couple of miles away from his house when he was like 10 years old. Nobody thought anything of it. I was raised on the same property he was and was allowed to wander around the neighborhood alone during the day, but definitely no solo camping trips. Now my husband and I will be raising kids on the same property, and probably will have to restrict our kids to just our backyard. Not because things are objectively less safe, but because I don't want CPS to be called on us for no reason. I think it's bullshit and our kids would be better off gaining more independence at that age, but it's also very much not worth the serious risk, so I don't really see a way around it. Story 6. Reading comprehension has disappeared. Reading instructions and following them. Understanding context. The amount of functionally illiterate adults is astounding to me, so I'd like to see the book group trend come back. Like, read a book a week, then talk about it to comprehend the story, themes, characters, and be able to get that skill back into everyday life while socializing. Story 7. Empathy being considered a positive. So many people now just can't understand another suffering, don't want to, and dislike you for asking them to. Story 8. Conspiracy theorists uses to be seen as nut jobs. Now every person has at least once conspiracy theory that they believe to be truth. Story 9. Politics aside, after Obama was elected, there was a nationwide trend to improve your public speaking and articulation skills, and people made a concerted effort to appear more educated. We've now backslid into anti-intellectualism and poorly articulated thought processes again. Story 10. Politicians being able to vote for legislation across the aisle without fear of being labeled a rhino or DH-no because it made sense for the American people. Story 11. Pre-Reagan trend of access to free affordable with a part-time summer job, public university education and government job training programs. Story 12. Forums and message boards with geeks and passionate experts solving every issue known to man for free and with a thoroughness and competence that any company or group could only dream of today. Story 13. Spatial awareness. Most kids don't seem to acknowledge other people's carts in grocery stores, and their parents are mostly to blame. I used to go out of my way to avoid, but now it's Frogger time. Story 14. U.S. presidents debating issues instead of having the equivalent of a rambling diss track with each other. Story 15. I'd love for them to bring back TV shows that were 20 episodes in one season, take the summer off, and start a new season right away in the fall. Those were the days. Story 16. Being earnest in comedy. I love my fair share of ironic humor, but I'm so tired of the joke is funny because it's not funny being absolutely everywhere. Story 17. I'm gonna probably get downvoted to hell on this one, but I really miss getting tons of Christmas cards in the mail and hanging them up for the season. It was such a nice little thing wishing you well, and it felt good to celebrate relations that way. Story 18. Thinking for yourself. Not believing everything blindly. I feel like that was a trend before, but now people just repeat the talking points of their team like zombies or whatever. I'd like the trend of not being a zombie to come back again. Answer. I read through a busy political post asking how to find actual academic and vetted publications supporting the things said and pushed by the right. While not a supporter, I was truly interested. Most commenters flared as Trump supporters said they don't even use right-leaning news, considering it's still bias, and instead follow what they see on YouTube, Top Choice, and social media. Today marks the end of the Vietnam War, and not one flag is raised. Share this if you support U.S. troops. Thankfully, my friends on FB see my mother's posts and alerted me to that one so I could talk to her. About blindly following what she sees online, politics aside, thinking for oneself has always been a struggle because humans are social creatures, and if you don't agree, you're an outcast. And loneliness can sometimes be a fate worse than passing. Then you've got the naturally gullible ones like me who trust everything everyone says. Took me to my early 20s to finally figure out that just because someone truly believes something doesn't make it the truth, and that there are so many people out there who will purposely hurt and manipulate me to get what they want. Story 19. Writing handwritten letters. Some people don't do this nowadays. I love writing handwritten letters. Story 20. Physical photo albums are something special. We actually still print out pictures of our children and put them in albums so they can hold those moments in their hands someday. There's something magical about flipping through pages filled with real photos. It turns memories into something tangible, something you can pass down, share stories over. Story 21. Manners and people forming their own thoughts and opinions instead of following whatever is popular online. Story 22. Dueling. I think we'd be more tactful in how we engage with society if somebody could legally slap you in the face with a glove and make you take turns shooting flintlock pistols at each other. Story 23. Anyone remember when picking up litter was trending and people were posting the before and after photos of areas they cleaned? I loved those. Story 24. Fact-based journalism. None of this emotional garbage. They tell you how to feel about the news without delivering any actual facts. Story 25. Summer weather in Jersey. I want to go down the shore. What's with all this rain? I didn't realize New Jersey was New Seattle. Yay. What are you gonna do? Story 26. Conspiracy theories used to be shunned. Now they define some people's identities. I want to go back to shunning kooky people. Story 27. We should all know less about each other. Social media saw the meteoric rise of oversharing and posting stuff like, "Yum, I just had a milkshake." Story 28. When our elected representatives and senators actually gave a shoot about the Constitution and the law and would hold a law-breaking president accountable. Story 29. Lake living, in cut-offs and a faded band tee, or your old gym shorts and a bathing suit top that makes tan lines that you can never get rid of. Story 30. Pokémon Go or an equivalent. It didn't force kids to choose between staring at their phones or being active outdoors. Augmented reality needs a kick in the pants. Story 31. Tamagotchis. They were simple, pointless, and weirdly satisfying. I'd love to see them come back. While everyone's hyped about AI assistants that manage your whole life, I'm just out here missing the thrill of keeping a pixelated blob alive for more than 3 days. Story 32. Blogs, LiveJournal, Tumblr, and niche forum. Less Reddit, more independent forums, useful search engines, not SEO AI paid for listings. Story 33. Learning to accept people have different ideas and that you're willing to listen to these differences without devolving into a us versus them mentality. Story 34. Bringing back LAN parties, LOL. Nothing bonds friends like yelling across the room and playing games with Cheeto dust on face, haha. Story 35. A great trend that faded but deserves a comeback is handwritten letters. They showed real effort and added a personal, thoughtful touch that text just can't match. In a fast digital world, a simple handwritten note can feel more meaningful than ever. Story 36. Oh dear. Remember handwritten letters, like actual pen to paper, maybe with a doodle in the corner or a little spritz of perfume if you were feeling dramatic? I loved those. They took effort, sure, but that's what made them special. You'd open the mailbox and hello, something personal, not just bills or ads. It's kinda wild how we went from that to LOL OK texts. I'd totally bring that back. Imagine sending a letter just to say hey or tell someone about your week. Super low pressure, super sweet. Story 37. Gonna actually answer your question. Stuff like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge actually worked. Seemed like an empty gesture done by celebrities solely for the social brownie points. It was that too. But it had a measurable impact on the cause. Story 38. People going out to explore parks and cities and getting excited with Pokémon Go was fun. I know some still do, but it was a nice time. Story 39. Volunteerism. I don't know if it slowly disappeared, but trust me, if you weren't alive during Band-Aid Live Aid Hands across America, Hearing Aid, Northern Lights USA for Africa, etc., then you really missed something that no one talks about, but was really incredible. There was a culture of helping, with work and devotion and sacrifice. Story 40. Parents believing that their children are not perfect and that other adults, teachers and cops, are not just being mean to them. Story 41. How about a little peace, love, and understanding? Because that was written by hippies and second-gen hippies, and people who should remember the 1960s and 1970s a bit more clearly. Focus on the reality, why we needed it then, and why we need it again now. Answer: I so wish I had a time machine to zap my granddaughter to growing up in that time. We had our wars, we had our protests, some ending tragically, but all in all, it was still a kinder, gentler, more caring time, and we accomplished so much that has now been undone. People seem to forget that it was that generation, the mid to tail end of the dawn boomers, that started saying care for the earth, fought for and got women's rights, started calling for fossil fuel alternatives, doing recycling drives, protesting wars, and so much more. I despise that the boomers heading lumps me barely into the same group as those who caused the issues and wouldn't listen to the part that tried to fix, or at least bring attention to the issues. Story 42. Accepting others for their differences. Now, people are practically encouraged to give in to every ignorant fear. Their minds can dream up and fall for lies that scapegoat others for society's ills. They're back to readily hating others for merely existing. Story 43. Being able to, relatively, easily repair stuff when it wore out, instead of throwing it away and buying something else. For example, one of the old laptops I used to own had an easily replaceable battery. When it got some age on it and the battery life went to shoot, I was able to buy a genuine replacement battery, not a knockoff made of the finest Chinesium or titanium money can buy, and replace it without having to disassemble the entire laptop. If memory serves, the battery was more or less external, with just a little slider switch that would allow you to pop the old battery out. Cars are similar too. Once upon a time, it was possible to make a car that either didn't run at all or ran real bad, run well again with little more than a screwdriver and a hammer. These days, you need a computerized scan tool just to find out what the problem is, and once you track down the problem, you just have to replace the part that isn't working correctly. I remember rebuilding the carburetors on my old motorcycle, but if the throttle body, which serves a similar purpose, on my Focus ever goes bad, I'm going to have to replace the throttle body instead of just replacing the stripped out plastic gears inside of it. I miss the days when stuff was repairable instead of disposable. Story 44. Affordable ticket prices for music, sports, movies, cultural events. There's something so beautiful in humans sharing those experiences together, creating mini communities where we can bond with strangers over the elements that speak to our souls and make us feel alive. But rapid corporatization and exorbitant profit-driven pricing created a virtual blockade that makes it downright impossible for regular, read non-multimillionaires people to afford. Story 45. Hula hoops. I don't see them anymore except for those flimsy ones they use in schools, making your own Christmas decorations at home with your family. I know that Stanley Cups are or have been trendy lately, but I dislike them. The cute stainless steel reusable flask bottle trend that came in 2016-2019 was great though. I hope most of those bottles didn't end up collecting dust or thrown in the landfill, but I appreciate that the trend got people into reusable bottles, and the patterns that I saw were very aesthetically pleasing. Anything Galaxy was also good, except for the clothes though. I don't think that pattern looked good when stretched and scrunched, but shoes, phone cases, backpacks, sure. Story 46. Chuck Norris jokes. Actual Chuck Norris jokes are played out. It'd be fun to see another joke trend that's pretty funny, basically respectful, and everyone is in on. Story 47. Volunteers en masse to states after natural disasters to truly help the locals in need. Not for clout chasing or photo ops, but actually there to help a family claim memories from the rubble, salvage rebuildable assets, and the like. Answer: and the end of volunteerism, which is just people posing for pics for Instagram while they do nothing of value. I actually read how there are places that have them build houses for the poor for a few days. But because it's people who don't have actual skills, the locals themselves tear down the houses for the next group while building actual houses on their own time using all the tourist money. Story 48. Upholding the Constitution as president. Putting personal finances and assets into a private trust during one's presidency. Not using the presidency to sell products and services for financial gain. Story 49. Yes, please miss those slower, thoughtful spaces where people actually talked instead of just scrolled. Would be so cool to see that kind of vibe make a comeback. Story 50. Discussion to exchange knowledge as opposed to arguments to shout each other down and hoard up votes. Story 51. People being able to communicate in public places. Excuse me, just going to reach right here, etc. Ask seem to be lost in the grocery store, whereas now people glare at me for not knowing what their next move is. Story 52. A lot of the indie sleaze hipster fashion. My guilty pleasure. Not like the Galaxy leggings, but cardigans and the skinny jeans and combat boots. Story 53. When TikTok was people doing dances and actually lip-syncing versus TikTok, now is all advertisements for TikTok shop junk and people begging and battling for money. Story 54. The option to get a callback rather than sit on hold listening to a bad song. Bit crushed to hell. I especially appreciated this when I was making a doctor's appointment for a migraine. Story 55. 24-hour supermarkets. As a second shifter, it was nice when I could get off work and do some shopping without worrying that the Walmart was going to close in 45 minutes. Story 56. Not shaking hands. It was a thing for a while during COVID, but all the germy MFers had to bring it back. Story 57. Actual scientists discussing the research and findings in the news, and not just opinion journalists, half of whom, in Australia at least, barely finished high school. Story 58. Being educated. Not even highly, just adequately. Things like reading and writing, math, critical thinking, basic courtesy and politeness would be nice. Story 59. Unhinged local commercials. Bring back the weird furniture store guy yelling in a chicken suit about zero APR. Society needs him now more than ever. Story 60. Honestly, just people showing up at your house unannounced just to hang out. No texts, no pressure, just a knock on the door and, hey, wanna chill? We were so much more connected before we got so connected. I miss that kind of casual closeness. Story 61. Dueling among the political class. Bullshit artists and online trolls might begin to act differently if forced to defend their words with real-world consequences. Story 62. Dressing up for dinner out, cocktail parties, and social gatherings. It is wild that people used to have formal attire, business attire, cocktail attire, and casual attire. Now people go to Michelin star restaurants in sweatpants and Ugg boots. Story 63. Wouldn't it be nice if we dressed a little nicer when we're traveling by airplane? We used to do that, but now everyone is practically wearing pajamas. Answer. When airlines stop herding us like cattle and seeding us like sardines, then maybe people will prioritize wearing a nice outfit again. Can you imagine trying to climb over everyone's knees to get to the bathroom in a pencil skirt and heels? Or getting your layover pushed back 5 hours while you're stuck at an overcrowded gate in Newark in a wool suit and tie? Story 64. Discussing real life being taboo on the internet. I am from the old guard and still feel uncomfortable even sharing where I am from. Story 65. Being able to have a normal, rational conversation about politics or any issue, really. If you disagree slightly with either extreme, you are labeled an ism or called some horrible name. Story 66. People from different political parties being respectful to each other while acknowledging their differences in opinions. Story 67. The high and tight type haircuts boys men get. As a bald man, I think this style is timeless and looks great. Every time my son gets one, I say, "Darn boy, you good-looking lady killer." IDK if the ladies like them. But I think the perms on boys look pretty goofy. Story 68. Paper resumes. You have to fill it out, go in and submit. And before AI, the hiring part had to manually review for consideration. Story 69. I did like it when memes meant something specific and tangible, not just anything online that is meant to be funny. Story 70. Social media post like Harlem Shake and Mannequin Challenge, or when the internet was mainly used to see funny videos. Now it's all about making a statement and being super political. Bring back the days when everyone would post every single meal on Instagram. Story 71. Eating dinner together, putting the phone down while you eat, and actually talking to each other. Not videoing every single thing. I'd love to go to a concert and watch the show without 100 cameras in my view. Story 72. Civility in discussions, especially diverse views and beliefs. We don't have to agree to be respectful and even be friends. I'd also love to actually discuss and listen to others and learn and grow. Story 73. So from 1945 to about 1973, there was this trend where the world just in general was getting better. It would be nice if that made a comeback. Story 74. No one's writing actual trends here, just things that are no longer a part of the modern world. Come on, everybody. For my contribution, I'd like to mention butterfly clips. Also, feather earrings. What a vibe. Story 75. Opening the door for a woman. Car or building door. Doing it or making the effort every time so she feels special. Story 76. Potlucks. Maybe they do them at other churches, but I haven't seen one since the early 90s. It was great. Story 77. Probably get downvoted, but a fellow elder millennial and I were recently discussing how we miss people sharing statuses on Facebook of what they were doing, their opinions, latest favorite album, and so on. It was kind of nice when social media was actually social. Story 78. Lying has consequences, and people that break the law, eliminate people through their actions, violation people, and have intimacy with kids go to jail and never get released. That would be a good start. Story 79. I still think a lot of the 2012-2016 era Tumblr girl style is very cute and should come back. Not like galaxy print leggings and owl necklaces, obviously, but a lot of it. Story 80. I know this one might seem dumb, but I miss when fast food places would sell promotional items for a movie. And I'm not talking about Burger King selling a Whopper with a different colored bun. I miss the promotional cups made from glass, the watches, stuff like that. The items themselves were cheap, but I thought it helped build the hype for a movie. It worked when I was a kid, at least, LOL. Story 81. People not leaving their house for months on end so I can have some peace and quiet. That was pretty sweet. Story 82. Virtual reality and augmented reality, VR and AR. They were too expensive and people preferred buying games consoles instead, but I'd like to see the technology improved and become affordable and used again. ETA spelling VR. Story 83. Disney's hand-drawn animation style they had going on from, I want to say, 1998 to 2009 maybe? You know, The Emperor's New Groove, Prince of Egypt, ETC. I really miss that style of animation, and I hope it makes a return. Story 84. From an anthropology perspective, it's interesting that most of the responses on this thread are simply illustrating traditional American values. Most of the responses are not cultural norms outside America, and even the West as a whole. Story 85. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say planking. Good wholesome fun, stupidity and silliness, those were simpler times. Maybe planking is what we need to fight climate change. Story 86. It's pretty minor, but steampunk isn't drawing new people, so the crowds and conventions are starting to age out and get smaller. Story 87. Guillotines really dropped in popularity after the French Revolution, but I think they're ready for a bigly comeback. Story 88. 247 or late-night businesses. What the fudge are you supposed to do if you're working until everyone is closed? Story 89. Trick or treating, but with less of the land yacht, Peterbilt's people drive their kids around in. I think part of it might be growing paranoia, so they either don't go out or take the Tahoe with a semi-truck trailer, or the kids don't want to go because they don't want to be seen as childish. Story 90. I was just talking about this in an EV discussion, but roadside attractions. I think now's a perfect time for them. Install charging ports in every spot and sell a ticket-full charge combo. Gives people something to do while their car charges. Story 91. Nintendo DS and Nintendo 3DS. I was born the same year that the DS first came out, and so I was young when DSs were popular. That and the Nintendo Wii were my first gaming consoles. Nintendo DSs were great because you could bring portable dual-screen gaming wherever you went, and games were mostly family-friendly. It's hard to find DS games that had older teen, adult age ratings. Most are rated 3 or 7. They allowed kids to game in a portable way safely, with less risk of them accessing content harmful for their developing brains. Story 92.